Okay, boys and girls, we've been working on this text set in preparation for writing a comparing and contrasting essay about the topic of flavoring food. Now, there are two articles in this text set providing you with information about this topic. Now, we've already done several things. We've gone directly to the writing prompt before we even read, and we noticed that it says that the passages you read were about adding flavor to food in the past and in the present. Now, we've all read these articles and you've annotated the text. So you already know that one of the articles talks about flavoring foods today. It's the current. It's current, what they do today. Let me just zoom this in just a little bit. And one of the articles is more historical, and it goes back to the 1400s and 1500s and talks about the spice wars. So we have two different articles set in two different time periods about the same topic. And it says in the directions to write an essay in which you explain, and remember we went ahead and we put a circle around the word explain, where we explain the similarities and differences in making food taste better during each of these times. Now, we've talked about how important it is to annotate the text when we're reading. So if you were to look at your pages, your pages might look something like this. They should look something like this. You may not have marked your pages the same way that I did, but you should have marked your pages. Because remember, we're writing a comparing and contrasting essay. So we're looking for connections across these two texts. We're looking for similarities. Now, if you think back to the lesson that we did comparing apples and oranges, that lesson was to help us wrap our brain around this type of thinking. And remember, we said both apples and oranges have a skin, but the skin is different. So what we're looking for ways in which these articles are similar. Now, the first thing that we need to do when we're planning, and I'm going to ask you to plan your essay in your notebook. I'm going to make a plan on this sheet. Remember, our planning page that we have is lined on one side and blank on the other. I'm going to use the blank side. So go ahead and put the date in the corner of your notebook page. Now, the directions are leading us to write a compare and contrast essay. So, and it's an explanatory essay. We haven't done too many of these. So we're trying to explain. It's informational. We are going to provide information. So our thesis statement is going to be setting us up and setting our reader up to know and understand that we are writing a comparing and contrasting essay. Finding the similarities, comparison, and the differences, the contrast between flavoring food in the 1400s and flavoring food today, what it is like. So our thesis statement, and you are welcome to use the same thesis statement. Okay, so although the way we flavor food today is different than in the 1400s, there are some similarities. Remember that our thesis statement goes in a cloud. And so notice how this is a different type of a thesis statement here. We're setting our reader up to know that we are going to find the similarities and the differences in flavoring food. Comparing and contrasting flavoring food from the 1400s to today. Because that is the information that we were given in the article. So take a minute and look through the annotations that you have made in the white space of your article. And look to see if there's anything that was talked about in both articles. Remember when we did our post-test for our reading the weather, reading the world, and we were reading about fire ants and killer bees? There was a subtopic in both articles. Both articles talked about building rafts, the fire ants' ability to build rafts. Both of them gave information. So you're looking for a topic that was covered in both, a subtopic that was covered in both articles, something that you can find that's similar between the two, even though it's going to have some differences as well. I'd like you to go ahead and turn and talk to a partner. Find one thing that you noticed that they talked about in both articles. Do you have a partner, Terry? Are you standing up? Okay, so boys and girls, remember, if you don't have a partner, you're supposed to be standing up. And a partner is just two people working. Okay, so Carol, go ahead over and work with Terry. And you, Chan, go ahead and work with Anthony. Give me a thumbs up if you've already found something that's talked about in both articles. Okay? All right, Tegan, could you share? Is your partner Aiden? So you and Aiden, what did you notice was talked about in both articles?
We noticed that there was they both talk about preserving foods.
Okay, they both talk about preserving foods. They both talk about preservatives. Okay, so I'm just going to write this out here. I'm not really making it one of my boxes, but I'm just writing it down because it's one of the things that we noticed they talked about in both. And if you remember, in the article about are these chips too delicious, they talked about the fact that because we process and preserve foods in order for them to last longer on the shelves and not go bad quickly, okay, it was losing its flavor or taste, and adding flavor to food what is part of making preserved or processed foods taste good. In A Bloody History, they talked about the fact that one of the reasons they started using things like nutmeg and peppercorns to flavor food was to mask the rotten food flavor that the food had. They didn't have refrigeration back then. You would have to dry your food in the sun, dehydrate it, or you would have to smoke it in a smokehouse, or you would have to cure it with salt. Cover the outside with salt. Okay? So both articles talked about the impact of preservatives on flavoring food and how that influenced the history. Okay, did anybody come up with another way that they were similar? Sawyer, was your partner Oliver? Okay, so
We came up with secrets. Those articles talk about having secrets.
both articles did talk about having secrets. Okay, the article that was about the chips, Are the Chips Too Delicious, talked about how they work in secret labs and they keep their formulas in safes. They protect their secrets because it's very competitive, right? They don't want another company to discover their formula for adding flavor to food, because then that company can replicate it. They can make that same thing, that same flavor, and they might be able to sell more of it than you do. Okay, it's a very big competition. Now, in the second article of Bloody History, it talks about how where the spices were growing was a secret. That the traders and the merchants who discovered where these spices were being could be found, were grown, kept it a secret. It says the Middle Eastern and Asian traders who brought spices to Europe refused to reveal where they got their seasonings. So where they were getting these spices was a secret. So can everybody see that? Both articles talk about secrecy, but they talk about secrecy in different ways. So I'm just going to write over here next to where I wrote preservatives. I'm just going to write down secrets. All right, so far we found two things that are talked about in both articles. And we've also kind of just written in the air, talked about the differences between them. All right. Did anybody find something else that they noticed was similar? Carter?
They talk about money.
They talk about money, profits. In the first article about chips, are these chips too delicious? They talk about all of the money that companies make for coming up with new flavors. Okay, not that long ago, I think it was Lay's potato chips had like a contest for people to come up with their a flavor that they would like. Okay, I think a lot about things like Doritos and chips. Those are highly processed foods and they are flavored with chemicals, and so and people buy them a lot. Very convenient, doesn't go bad, lasts on your shelf, doesn't need to be refrigerated. Okay, so in the chips article, the profits can be made if you come up with a flavor that people love and they buy it. Okay, that formula could be worth millions of dollars. And then if we go back to a Bloody History, it talks about the fact, remember we said they kept it a secret, nobody knew where to get it. Okay, and so over here it says, this meant they could charge super high prices to customers. Over here, guys, did you notice I used a money symbol when I annotated my text? Okay, over here it talks about the fact that it says, until the 1700s, one of the most valuable items in Europe may have been the ugly brown seed of the nutmeg tree. Peppercorns and cloves were worth almost as much. These spices were so costly that a few handfuls could make a person exceedingly rich. Okay, so again, both articles talk about the money aspect and how valuable spices or adding flavor to food was during that time or is during our time. Okay, so far we've noticed that they both talk about preservatives, they both talk about keeping secrets, and they both talk about profits. Did anybody else come up with something that they noticed was similar between the two? Adrian, did you come up with something? You're just stretching? Nobody else came up with. One of the things I noticed is that they kind of talked a little bit, I'm not sure exactly what I would put, conflict. When I think about the article about the bloody history, they actually had wars. They had what they call the Spice Wars, and they fought battles to control the islands where these spices were growing. Okay, so I don't know if I would put like conflict, maybe a negative effect or a negative impact. Something like that. That was kind of a negative of it. Those battles that they had to control the islands. And then when we think about the chips, when we think about are these chips too delicious, there's a part of that article that talks about how eating these types of foods can have a negative effect on you. It's not good for your health. Okay, it's not good for your health. And some would even argue that the companies that flavor food or come up with food flavoring formulas do so in such a way that you can't stop eating them. And that actually some of those chemicals that they use to flavor the foods will shut off your own body's way of telling you you're full so that you overeat. And many people will argue that this leads to obesity, drinking sugary drinks, eating processed food that has certain flavors in it, where you just keep eating them until they're all gone. Okay? All right, so we've come up with 4 different ways in which these 2 articles are similar, so they can become our boxes. We're going to choose 3. So go ahead really quickly and put a check mark next to the ones that you want to choose. There are 4, so just choose the 3 that you feel the most strongly about. And we need to write the information that we would put in our box. And the information in our box is information that, who do you need? Yes. 12:20, yes. We'll be back at 1:05. Okay. All right. Okay, so we know that when we're planning an essay, we want to write a complete sentence in our box because that guarantees that we will have a complete sentence in our essay. Okay, I notice when I'm looking at your plans and I'm reading your essays that those of you who don't have a complete sentence to begin your body paragraph, you didn't have a complete sentence in your plan. Okay, so I'm just going to think about the one that I want to talk about first, and I think I want to talk about the secrets first. So remember that my topic sentence for my body paragraph, it needs to be written in that compare and contrast way. So both then and now there was an element of secrecy about adding flavor to food. So you'll notice that my topic sentence for my first body paragraph is going to identify the similarity. In my body paragraph, I'm going to be talking about what was secretive about the first article. Are these chips too delicious? What are they talking about when they're talking about secrets? Then I'm going to talk about the second article, bloody history, and I'm going to talk about the secrets, just like we did when we compared apples and oranges. Both apples and oranges have skin. However, their skins are different. And then we talked about the skin of an apple, and then we talked about the skin of the orange. That's the same thing that we're going to do in our essay. Okay, I'd like you to turn and talk with a partner. Choose one of the other main ideas that you wanted to talk about and write with your partner, write your topic sentence for your second body paragraph. You can use the first one as a template and just follow the pattern. Okay. Adrian, I was listening to you and, is it Federico? Okay. I could only see you from the back. I couldn't see your face. Okay, so I was listening to the two of you have a conversation. Would one of you share with me the sentence that you wrote? Go ahead. Okay. I'm going to ask you to repeat it again because somebody is still having a conversation and I'm having a hard time. Go ahead. Okay. I'm just going to modify it just a little bit, both then and now. Flavoring food. Was connected to preservatives. You could flip that around and say preservatives were connected to flavoring food. Did somebody do a different one? Did somebody do a different one? Taken? Aiden and I. Okay, so both then and now. Money, and then can you say the rest of it again?
Money was a big impact on inflation.
Okay, had a big impact on the food flavoring business. Now, if you chose the one about the negative impact or the conflict, you might be able to say, both then and now, the food flavoring business had a negative effect on people. Or both then and now, flavoring food has a negative impact on people. Okay, so far we've written our thesis statement and we have written the three topic sentences for our 3 body paragraphs. Now, what you're going to do during the work time today is you are going to go back into the articles and you're going to find the evidence that you're going to need in order to complete your plan. Remember, underneath your boxes go the bullets. So now you need to go back into the articles and you need to read what was secret about the food flavoring. And hopefully, if you were really good with your annotating the text, you won't have to reread the whole article. That's why we do that, to save time. So you're going to talk about how secrecy affects flavoring food today. You're going to talk about how secrecy affects flavoring food in the 1400s. The same with the preservatives. You're going to talk about how flavoring food is connected to preservatives today. And you're going to talk about how the flavoring of food was connected to preservatives in the 1400s. If you talked about money, or when you talk about money, you're going to talk about competition and profits in flavoring food today, and profits and competition in flavoring food in the past. Okay, so you're going to gather evidence from both articles. Make sure when you're doing your plan, you indicate which article it came from, because when you go to write, you're going to need to cite your source. You're going to need to cite your source. Okay, does anybody have any questions before you go back to your seats to work? Okay, I'm going to be pulling a few people for writing conferences while you're working. So I'm going to ask you to bring your writing conference sheet with you when you come back to see me. All right, go ahead back to your seats.